Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Lips Sealed Shut. By Evil Cat 23. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin chapter 1. Izumi felt sick. He seemed so nice. The perfect gentleman for her mother. Bile rose from her stomach, up her throat, and a little bit poured into her mouth. She forced herself to swallow it down. Fresh hot tears poured down her cheeks and she stopped herself from crying out or sobbing. She feared if she opened her mouth she'd either scream, vomit, or both. Sharp gasps left her mouth in rapid succession as she started to shake. Izumi clutched the blanket to her bare chest, though at this point, the fresh bruises up and down her body told her it didn't matter anymore. "Oh, will you stop that bawling? I hardly hurt you." Her mother's boyfriend, Fujiwara Hinoshi, grunted as he pulled his pants up. Dangling precariously between his lips was a lit cigarette that threatened to fall with his movements. Fujiwara was a tall man in his mid-50s. His hair was peppered black and gray as was the stubble on his chin. His eyes were dark blue and void of almost any light. Unlike Izumi, he wasn't exactly strong. Honestly, if Izumi would have known, she would have fought back. But she had no time to prepare and his quirk overtook her. Much like the hero killer Stain, Fujiwara had a paralysis quirk. All he needed was touch. It wasn't fair. Izumi thought through her tears. All Fujiwara had to do was grab her wrists and she was sleeping. She couldn't stop him and was forced to. She gagged loudly and this got Fujiwara's attention. It happened so fast. Before she did anything her hair was grabbed and he tugged hard. "You vomit, I'll shove your face in it." "Got it." He snarled, blowing cigarette smoke directly in her face. She couldn't do anything. He was touching her. The moment he let go she crumpled on her bed with a sob. Izumi gritted her teeth as anger suddenly filled in the pit of her stomach. "You won't get away with this." She suddenly threatened as she felt a bit braver. She knew his quirk and how it worked. "Oh, really?" Fujiwara didn't touch her as he simply leaned down. The cigarette was almost completely burnt out now. "Let me guess, you're going to run to your superhero teachers and tell them what I did. How I forced myself on you. Pretended to care for that fatty of a mother you got." Izumi growled. "Don't talk about my mom like that." The slap came harsh across her cheek. Compared to breaking bones and even being punched by All Might it hardly hurt, but it did its job and shut her up. Suddenly, Fujiwara clapped his hand harshly over her mouth and pulled her up uncomfortably by her cheeks. Her limbs went limp and no matter how much she tried to fight it she was unable to move. "Now, here's what's gonna happen, Aizu. You aren't going to tell your teachers a DMN thing, nor are you going to tell your mom, because if you do Fujiwara leaned down blowing one last puff of smoke in her face before suddenly putting the cigarette out on her arm. It sizzled out on her skin and it left a red and angry blister in its place and left a lingering pain throbbing behind. "I'll kill your mom." "No," Fujiwara threw Izumi back, making the back of her head smack into the headboard. Izumi gasped out as she saw stars for a moment. Izumi whimpered as tears started to spill out of her eyes and land on her mattress. "You're a monster." She wheezed out. "An absolute monster. Would Shigaraki even stoop this low? Oh, and before you even think about forgetting to visit your mom on the weekends, understand this. What I did to you, I can easily do to her." She wanted to scream. To punch this guy into next week with her quirk, but would her mother understand? Would her mother even believe her? Would anyone believe her if she were to attack him, seemingly, unprovoked? She couldn't see Fujiwara behind the wall of tears that built up and flooded down her cheeks. "So, be a good little girl, Aizu, and make this easy on all of us." "All right." And with that Fujiwara turned and left the bedroom. Izumi whimpered a low whine and suddenly bit her lip so hard never before has she ever felt so helpless. Not even before she got one for all when she was bullied endlessly for being quirkless. She wanted nothing more than to forget it. Falling back onto her bare pillow, she grabbed it and shoved it over her face. It never happened. She wanted to convince herself that it wasn't real. That she was lost in a nightmare and any moment now she'd wake, but the dull ache that throbbed between her legs, and she couldn't hold it in anymore. Throwing the covers off of her body, she gunned it for the bathroom where she finally threw up. Visit Mom every Friday evening and stay until early Sunday morning. That's always how it's been since the dorms were added to UA High. The RPE happened Saturday night. It was now extremely early Sunday morning. So early, in fact, that the sun had yet to properly rise. Izumi knew she was hurting her mother by not saying goodbye and having breakfast, but I can't have breakfast, not with him staring me down. So, the first thing she did when she got to the dorm was march straight to the baths. There are 2 bathrooms. One for the boys and one for the girls. The bathrooms was equipped with 2 showers and 1 tub. Izumi took the tub today. Filling up with the hottest water that made her feel like she was being boiled alive when she got into the tub. I deserve this pain, for being so stupid. So blind. There were warnings and I ignored them. Her mind screamed at her. Honestly, when Inko Midoriya told Izumi that she met someone at work and was dating again, Izumi was happy for her mother. It's been years since Hisashi passed on and it was great that her mother was finding love again. Izumi knew her mother was just preparing for the right moment to introduce the 2 of them, and eventually, when Inko was sure the relationship was going to last, months later, they met. Looking back, there were signs, small subtle ones that, if Izumi had paid more attention to, the first thing Fujiwara said to her, "You are an absolutely stunning woman. Strong and smart as well. If you were older I might be going after you." Not. "Hello. Nice to meet you." He was afraid he'd accidentally use his quirk on me. Or that I'd somehow know what his quirk was. Then came the second red flag just a few weeks prior. He had cornered her in the kitchen. Not maliciously, at least, that's what Izumi thought at the time. She was making herself some ramen for lunch when he came in and walked up to her. She was between the counter and the stove. With no way out. He stood close, not too close, just close, and chatted with her. Izumi remembered feeling uncomfortable, but chalked it up to Fujiwara not understanding personal space. And again, looking back, he kept talking about how appealing she was. How he was surprised she didn't have a boyfriend. How could I be so stupid? Hindsight was an absolute CNT. Izumi submerged herself under the water in the tub. Her wild curly hair bounced around her as she tried to just stay there. She wanted to suffocate, to drown in the bathwater. Yeah, it'd be a lame death and All Might would regret ever choosing her as his successor, but at least she wouldn't have to live with the knowledge of what she's been through. Unfortunately her survival instincts took over and she's forced to the surface. She sucked in a loud deep breath and scowled as she looked at her murky reflection in the water. Fat water droplets fell from her hair and face and made ripples in the water. I shouldn't have left so early. What if he hurts Mom because of my decision? I sent her a text and left a note before I left. The door to the girls' bathroom suddenly opened and instantly Izumi pulled the curtain around the tub. Oh. Izumi, you're back. Mina excitedly exclaimed, her voice echoing around the tiled bathroom. Why yeah. I am. Izumi practically whispered back. I wanted to leave home early, to bathe. In the dorms. Yeah. She sunk a little lower in the water so it was up to her chin now. The lie comes easily to her. I left my All Might shampoo behind. Such a fangirl. Mina couldn't help but coo with a small giggle. Hey, that reminds me dash, before Izumi knew it the curtain was suddenly pulled back. Mina. Izumi gasped out in shock. You can't just dash, she covered her BRST with one of her arms and sank herself lower in the tub. Oh please, stop acting like we aren't all girls here what you have, I have. Besides, we've seen each other change in the locker rooms all the time. Mina winked with a playful giggle. She's right. It's not the first time she or another girl had barged in on me changing or in the tub to ask for something. We usually don't care, but that was before Can I borrow your body scrub? Mina asked while pointing to the body scrub that sat on the side of the tub. Izumi wasn't even aware of the fact that she was starting to shake a little. The body scrub? She asked as her heart rate suddenly spiked in fear. She could feel the tears start to prick. Mina's smile started to drop just a little. When it came to emotions, Izumi was an open book, unable to hide behind stoic expressions like Mr. Aizawa or Todoroki. So, she knew her look of horror, or pain, was very apparent on her face. Hey, I didn't mean to scare you, Izumi. Mina relaxed a little. I'm sorry. It made Izumi's heart pang with guilt. She hadn't meant to make Mina feel bad or guilty. It wasn't Mina's fault at all. And no. Izumi sniffled and fought back her tears and forced herself to smile at Mina. The smile was shaky. Almost a raucous smile. It's not your fault. I'm sorry. I had a rough weekend. Let's leave it at that. She doesn't want to, but Izumi moves her hand away from her melons and hands Mina the body scrub. Use as much as you'd like. She keeps the shaky smile up before hiding her melons once more. Mina returns the smile. Thanks. And with that she quietly returned the curtain to normal and made her leave. A few moments later the shower turns on and Izumi relaxes just a little more and let her hand drop. I have to get a hold of myself. If not, then everyone will know something's wrong. That something happened. He said he'd kill Mom if I told anyone, and I can't risk it. What if his quirk is something more powerful? What if it's not paralysis but something more akin to Shinsu's quirk? What if he can know that I've told because he's tracking me with mind control? Midoriya, darling. You're muttering again. Mina suddenly shouted over her shower. Izumi slapped her hand over her mouth in shock. It didn't take long for Izumi to leave the tub after that. She dried herself off, put on fresh clean clothes from her bag and retreated out of the baths. I have to be better about this. Smarter. Hey. Nerd. Bakugo was in front of her in seconds, blocking the way to the elevator with one of his arms. Let's spar. You and me. Izumi didn't even give him a second glance. She couldn't. Honestly, she feared if she looked at him she'd break, crack, and crumble. He's too much. Not now, Bakugo. Was all she could say as she took long strides and ducked under his arm to enter the elevator. Sure enough, that struck a nerve. What? He exploded in rage, small explosions leaving the palms of his hands. Izumi must have jumped 10 feet before she constantly and frantically hit the button for her floor. Thankfully, it closed before he could get to it. Still, she could hear him yelling. You're just scared I'll beat your butt, right? Is that it? You're weak and you know it. Up the elevator went, higher and higher, and it wasn't until Bakugo's yells faded into nothingness did Izumi finally allow herself to relax, if only for a few blissful seconds. I have to be smart about this. They can't know. Nobody can. Mom's life hangs in the balance. Not only that, but, what if they all see me as weak? Izumi bit her lip. She clenched her fists so tightly that she could feel her nails dig into the calluses on her hands. Izumi felt incredibly, undoubtedly stupid for having such a thought. But it was there regardless. Women were almost always seen as weaker, quirk or no quirk. Izumi feared that if it got that she was overpowered and taken advantage of. Nobody can know. Nobody. Chapter 2. Izumi lay curled up in the fetal position on her bed, hidden under her all-might covers with only her nose poking out for breathing purposes. She kept her knees pressed tightly to her chest with her arms wrapped around her knees for support. She could feel one arm start to go numb from lack of circulation. In. out. Just focus on your breathing. She kept telling herself as she squeezed her eyes tight. Think about nothing else. Just breathing. It was all she could do to keep the tears at bay. 4 days have passed since that incident. The new name Izumi would call it to lessen the blow. Izumi tried her hardest to return to normal like nothing had ever happened. Because nothing happened. She would do her best to remind herself in a chipper voice. It was just a horrible dream. I'm sure. I'm acting crazy. Even though Izumi would tell herself these things, and was sure it never happened, she still found herself jumping around her male classmates more often than not. Especially the loud ones. Kaminari, Kirishima, and Bakugo were the worst offenders of this. It would earn her concerned stares each and every time. That still wasn't the worst of her involuntary actions, however. The worst reaction she had was around a certain grape-headed boy. Before she'd shrug off Mineta's pervy nature, let it all roll off her shoulders, but now I can't. I can because I'm going crazy and it didn't happen. It didn't. Izumi felt pressure against her chest and tried to curl in on herself even more. Midoriya. It was Ochako. There was a knock at Izumi's door, causing her to jump a little in her bed. The doorknob rattled, showing that her friend tried to open the door but couldn't. Oh yeah, there was also the big issue. It's time for dinner. Ochako spoke in a soft voice as she said this. There was a PRGN pause as she waited for Izumi's response. Todoroki made soba. It's no secret. Over the past couple of days, Izumi Midoriya was refusing to eat. She tried, God, how she tried, but no matter what she ate she would just vomit it right back up. So far the only thing she could bring herself to stomach were crackers and just a bit of water. Izumi bit her lower lip. She could try, but her stomach churned, there was no way she could eat a whole bowl of soba. She wasn't even sure she could eat one noodle without vomiting. Maybe her friends wouldn't be worried about her drastic dietary change if she wasn't so obvious about it. Izumi tried to hide in the library for lunch, but that only worked for 2 days. After that her actions were questioned and she couldn't come up with a good enough excuse, so she'd sit with them. She tried not to eat, but that little stunt didn't even last for a day. Do you need lunch money? Todoroki had offered, quickly flashing his father's credit card to show his seriousness. Here, I have extra food if you want. Gita was just as quick to offer up some of his own food. You can have some of mine. Ochiko's offer was the one to break Izumi, as Izumi knew Ochiko couldn't afford to get more food. Izumi had to excuse herself before she broke down sobbing then and there. No. No. Don't be silly you guys, you know what? I have to go to the restroom. I'll be right back. She never did come back to them. She made yet another excuse after that. She knew it was lame because even she couldn't remember what she told them. After that her friends, along with the whole class, knew something was wrong with her. She wished she could just put on a show of eating something, anything that wasn't 1 or 2 crackers, but she couldn't. She just couldn't. Midoriya. Ochiko knocked again. Did you hear me? Sweetheart, it's time for dinner. I'm sorry. I'm not hungry. Midoriya croaked out, her own voice sounding frightened to her. Are you sure? I know you didn't eat lunch. There was worry and a motherly concern laced in every word Ochiko said. Or breakfast. The whisper was almost too quiet to hear. I'm fine. Izumi suddenly covered her entire face with her all-might blanket, cutting off her oxygen and smothering her in a sticky mixture of her own body heat and breath. I'm sorry. I'm just not feeling well, Ochiko. She spoke again hoping her friend heard. Okay, well. I'll leave the bowl in front of your door if you get hungry. Izumi clutched at her chest as hot tears cascaded down her face. She had to gnash her teeth together to keep herself from violently sobbing. I'm a horrible human being. She'd wait till late at night where she would take the bowl of soba waiting for her and dump it in the toilet. She would hope that maybe seeing an empty bowl would put her friend's mind at ease. "I'm going to hell," would repeat in her mind over and over again as she watched the noodles and broth swirl down the toilet and out of view. "I'm a horrible person and friend. I don't deserve these people. I don't deserve to be here, in this school." Her mind refused to let her rest as she would place the empty bowl outside of her door and go back to her bed, but not before double-checking to make sure the door was locked. The nightmares weren't the absolute worst. Izumi was almost used to nightmares at this point, more times than not her dreams were nightmares, ever since the training camp incident that was. What she didn't care for was waking up to her own frantic voice. Her voice was low, thankfully she didn't scream when she woke. Most of the time she'd either whisper yell, "Stop," but on the occasion she'd call out, "Get off of me." Only once did she actually wake up screaming. That was tonight, unfortunately. "Get the F off of me," she had wailed while fighting the invisible man hovering above her, keeping her hands together with one of his. It made Izumi want to cry. In fact, she did cry as she tried her hardest to keep her breath even. She feared she woke the whole dorm, but when nobody came knocking on her door, she felt at ease. What made the nightmares bad was the fact that Izumi couldn't sleep afterwards. With all the time she spent in bed, one would think she'd get more than 1 to 3 hours worth of sleep. So, she'd try to occupy the time. She couldn't lay in bed forever. She'd try to exercise to the best of her abilities or study. "I should pick up sleeping aids at the pharmacy after school tomorrow." She had thought on this particular night as she quietly lifted a dumbbell up and down. She was honestly exhausted. Maybe it was the lack of food or the lack of sleep or, most likely the case, a lack of both. Sleeping aids might even help her have dreamless nights. Something she wished for desperately, but more importantly, it would at least gift her 6 hours of sleep. Izumi put her dumbbell down and wiped some sweat from her brow. She now stood and started to do squats to work out her legs. "I know I should lay in bed and at least try and sleep, but it'd be a waste of time. Ow!" she suddenly whispered, a sudden pain in her arm. It felt like the fabric of her shirt rubbed against it the wrong way. When she pulled her sleeve back to see what caused the pain, she felt herself start to shake. SSHT. It's a little hard to convince yourself it didn't happen when the butt put out a cigarette on my arm, she thought. She had completely forgotten about the burn until... well, now. The burn was perfectly round in shape. The skin around it was red, inflamed, almost purple in color, but on the inside of the burn was another story. The inside of the burn was like a small lumpy crater filled with yellow pus. "That's infected." She didn't need Recovery Girl to tell her that much. She swallowed a lump in her throat. Izumi, the girl who broke both of her arms so horrifically that she runs the risk of never being able to use them again, felt afraid by this tiny little circle on her right forearm. "If I go to Recovery Girl, she'll know." No, but Izumi was certain that Recovery Girl knew what cigarette burns were and what they looked like. She'd tell Aizawa, who'd probably tell All Might, who'll either get me to confess or go straight to my mom. No. Recovery Girl is not an option. I can handle this on my own. What's a little infection? Okay. Okay. She stood there for a moment as a plan started to form in her mind. Quickly Izumi grabbed one of her spare notebooks and ripped a page out. Shopping list, sleeping aids. Burn cream, hydrogen peroxide. It wasn't the biggest shopping list, and the longer she looked it over the more she felt it was missing something. "I need a good reason for going to the pharmacy tomorrow," she thought as she mused over her little list. "Otherwise, Mr. Aizawa, or any teacher, won't allow it. I got it, no teacher will argue with this." Izumi hated using this particular card, but she felt she had no choice in the matter, and so she wrote it down as her own reminder. It's perfect. Izumi knew her friends were going to pull dirty tricks, and she was kicking herself in the butt for not realizing that they would do such a thing. At first there was the clever diversion. They were all walking towards the cafeteria when her classmates started to move in, surrounding her so she wouldn't try and sneak away. Izumi watched them carefully. Some talked to one another, making it look like they didn't realize what they were doing. Then Achiko wrapped her arms around Izumi's right arm as she excitedly spoke about one thing or another. Izumi was honestly having a hard time keeping up with what Achiko was saying. Well, these last few days, Izumi was having a hard time keeping up with much of anything really. Her mind was becoming sluggish and she always felt sleepy, so sleepy, but sleep wouldn't come. Still, Izumi smiled and nodded along. She kept her happy personality consistent to avoid any more suspicion, but Izumi knew it didn't matter when she was refusing to eat. Then it happened. The real dirty trick. A large hand clamped on her free shoulder and Izumi couldn't stop herself from jumping back in freight. "Hello, young Midoriya. Do you want to have lunch with me?" All Might, also known in his smaller form as Toshinori Yagi, questioned with a soft smile on his face. It was only then did Achiko let go of Izumi's arm, and her classmates all kept on walking like they didn't care, though some were giving her worried looks over their shoulders. It was a trap. She sadly thought. She knew her friends and classmates were only acting out of love. Of course, All Might. Izumi turned and smiled at him like nothing. If Toshinori suspected something was wrong, he never voiced it as the two of them walked away from the rest of the students. Though, at one point, as they went for All Might's office, she saw him looking at her out of the corner of his eye. Eventually, they made it, and the moment he shut the door, Toshinori wasted no time getting the point. "Your classmates tell me you aren't eating. Is everything all right?" he inquired while Izumi sat in her usual spot. Toshinori then placed a brown bag and some napkins in front of Izumi before he sat down across from her. She knew there was food inside and her heart ached. Izumi forced a smile. "Oh. I should have guessed." She really should have, but with the brain fog she's been experiencing as of late. She gave a small laugh in response as she tried to calculate the next thing she wanted to say. "Some speculate it might be because of what Mineta said to you a while back." Toshinori asked and Izumi went to reply but stopped. What did Mineta say to her? He says so much that it's almost impossible to remember. She tried to scratch her brain, but the brain fog was making it almost impossible. He said it just before she left for the weekend. "You know, Izumi, you'd be an absolute babe if you'd be just a bit Kavya." He said this while making the outline of a curvy body with his hands. "Oh. That stupid line." Izumi shook her head as she lazily giggled. "No. It has absolutely nothing to do with what Grape Boy told me. I don't take anything he says into account half the time." She told All Might. "Besides, he said that before dash," she snapped her mouth shut. Toshinori narrowed his eyes just slightly and quickly. Izumi tried to cover up her mistake with a cough. Sorry. I mean. He said I should be Kavya. Not skinnier." "I see, so, why aren't you eating then? Is there something going on that I need to know? Did something bad happen? I'm here if you need me." Izumi felt the back of her neck start to sweat. She wanted to break down. To cry to Toshinori about what happened between her and Fujiwara. How he had her and she couldn't even fight him off because of his stupid unfair quirk. Fujiwara threatened Mom, "Don't you dare forget that." She scolded herself. Not only that, but, what if All Might wanted one for all back because of it? He sees me as weak. Izumi swallowed a bit. Maybe I could kill two birds with one stone here, get him and my friends off my back and get to go to the store. I was going to wait for Aizawa. She gave a small and awkward laugh. Wow. This is awkward. She clutched at the hem of her skirt. I'm having female issues. All Might. All Might didn't seem to be catching on. He tilted his head and seemed to be thinking long and hard about it. My God. My PRD. All Might. I'm on my PRD. I haven't been hungry because of it. It was a horrible awful lie and she was going to hell for it. All Might's face was absolutely priceless however. He paled considerably before suddenly blushing. Then he panicked. It was actually slightly amusing to see All Might quickly scramble to save some face. Izumi crossed her arms over her chest and raised an eyebrow. There was a flash of smoke and the original All Might suddenly appeared in front of her. Never mind. He declared boldly. Actually laughing. Not a fake laugh like she's been putting up. It felt nice. It almost felt normal. Izumi shook her head and snatched up a napkin to hand to All Might. You never fail to make me laugh, you know that. She asked him. He happily took the napkin to dab at the blood coming out of his mouth. Well, that's good to hear. I'm just glad you're okay. When your friends came to me with their concerns I was worried. It's just unlike you. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. All Might confessed. He looked at the napkin, grimaced, and balled it up in his hand. I feel like this isn't said enough between us. If you ever need to talk, my door is always open, you know. Or my phone is always on. Yes. Izumi felt her heart clutch painfully. Thank you. I appreciate it, All Might. She was sincere in her thanks and wanted him to know. I'm sorry, I made you and my friends worry. I'm sure after the next few days I'll be back to normal. She smiled at All Might, though, unlike her previous laugh, her smile wasn't genuine. All Might sighed in relief. That's good. Izumi felt her stomach suddenly drop. Now or never. All Might. I hate to ask. Izumi pulled her bag off of her shoulders and opened it up. Then she pulled out the request to leave campus form. She collected it this morning. But I need to go to the store after school today. I'm out of tampons. No before you show. Izumi narrowed her eyes at the PRGNNCY test in front of her. This was not on her list of things to buy while she was out at the store. She had passed it on her way to buy tampons and next thing she knew she was checking out with it and a new box of saltine crackers, something else that wasn't on her list but she knew she should buy if she wanted to, you know, stay alive. It's absolutely way too early to know or even guess I'm PRGNNT. But I don't remember him ever putting a condom on and I'm not on the pill. She felt her whole body shudder while a wave of nausea struck her like a bolt of lightning. It'll be a few more weeks before I start showing any signs. Izumi tucked the PRGNNCY tests under the mattress of her bed. Just in case. She told herself, praying that Fujiwara had a VSCTMY or is shooting blanks. Maybe I should go to the doctors. He might have STDs or could have given me a ST, then I'll have to explain. Izumi felt lost and overwhelmed. There was so much she needed to do and not enough time. Izumi brought her hands to the sides of her head and started to tug at her hair while she squeezed her eyes shut. Too much. This is all too much. She almost wanted to tell someone just to help lessen the burden of it all and get some sound advice on where to start, but then Izumi remembered. She was attending a hero school. It wouldn't matter if she told Aizawa, All Might, or one of her friends. If she told anyone they'd either hunt Fujiwara down, endangering Izumi's mom in the process, or call the cops, also endangering Izumi's mother. Maybe if I knew how Fujiwara's quirk worked fully, all his drawbacks and powers connected, and if I knew his full schedule, then maybe, just maybe I could tell someone but, as for now, my lips stay sealed. Izumi lowered her hands from her hair and looked down. There were strands of her hair in both of her hands, lots of little strands. Izumi scrunched her nose up in disgust and shook her hands causing the strands of hair to fall to the ground. Her throat felt dry as she gulped. I can do this. I can do this. It's a minor setback. Because nothing happened. Remember. There was a knock at her door. Izumi. It was Tsu. Yeah. Izumi picked up the bag the rest of her items were in, glad she had already hidden the PRGNNCY tests away, and just tossed the bag and its contents under her bed. Is everything alright? She called when Tsu tried to open her door, but it was locked. It's always locked now. The rest of the girls and I are all going to watch a movie in the common room. Izumi could hear Tsu shuffle a little on the other side of the door. We wanted to know if you'd like to join us. Izumi got ready to decline, but then thought better of it. It sounds like it's just us girls, and a movie sounds nice. It'll take my mind off of things if only for a couple hours. She listened to her thoughts. Still, she couldn't stop herself from just opening the door a crack so she could look at Tsu. Just us girls. Yeah. None of the boys were interested. Okay. Izumi opened her door a little wider now. Tsu perked up, her face suddenly lighting up like she wasn't expecting Izumi to join in. Really? As long as the movie isn't too violent. No. No violence. We all agreed on a rom-com. How cliché. Izumi couldn't help but giggle, which made Tsu giggle in response. True. True. It honestly felt nice when Tsu wrapped one of her arms into the crook of Izumi's elbow to drag her away from her dorm. It made Izumi feel a little more secure, but also, just a tad wary. It was like Tsu didn't want Izumi suddenly taking off back to the safety of her dorm room. I know I haven't exactly handled the food thing well, but have I been too transparent about hiding away in my dorm? She wondered as Tsu dragged her to the common room. Izumi looked back at her door to her dorm and frowned. I'll be better about it. I just need a little more time. Yeah. Just a little more time and soon things will be back to how they used to be. That's the lie she was going to keep telling herself. Chapter 3 Izumi was getting better about hiding her eating issue. What she would do was suffer through lunch by forcing herself to eat the food. She usually chose something light, not katsudon. But something small like a salad. Of course, since her food was usually carb-heavy and after not eating for days, she suddenly started eating salads of all things, it raised a few eyebrows with her peers. She wouldn't eat dressing on it either, just dry salad. However, because she was eating nobody voiced a complaint. The thing was she was eating, they just didn't know that after lunch she'd go to the bathroom and promptly vomit up what she had eaten. Izumi knew she had a problem, she knew she should just open her stupid mouth and tell someone, anyone, but, now, here's what's gonna happen, Aizu. You aren't going to tell your teachers a DMN thing, nor are you going to tell your mom because if you do, I'll kill your mom. Izumi let out a loud retch as the last of her salad left her stomach. She spat out the bile that had risen into her mouth and shuddered at the bitter acidic taste lingering around her taste buds. Her heart beat wildly in her chest. I better hurry if I want to make it to class on time. She wiped her mouth with some toilet paper and flushed the toilet before standing up, her whole body shifted to the side and she stumbled, quickly catching herself on the bathroom stall. The world seemed to spin. She felt sicker than before. Izumi used the stall wall to keep herself supported as she waited for her head to stop spinning. I knew I shouldn't have eaten today, but... Seeing her friends' faces light up as she quietly shoved dry lettuce and carrots down her throat was worth it, in her opinion. They all looked so happy and relieved. The last thing she wanted was to make them worry. After a few moments of resting her head on the cool material of the bathroom stall, Izumi swallowed hard and peeled herself off of the wall. Okay, Izumi, one foot in front of the other, you can do this. If she wanted to make it to class in time she had to get moving. It was a little difficult at first, but after a few seconds, she started to feel a little less dizzy. It's Friday, after school, I have to go back to Mom's, I don't want to, but I know I have to. To ensure Mom's safety. Hey. There you are, I lost track of you. It was Mina. Mina was waving as she ran all the way to Izumi. Man, you really chose a far bathroom. Mina laughed as she suddenly locked her arm into Izumi's. She had. It was purposeful just in case someone else would hear her, so she chose a bathroom she knew wouldn't be occupied by other students. I hadn't realized. She faked a smile. Izumi tried to subtly take her arm out of Mina's, not enjoying the contact, but Mina wouldn't let go and didn't get the hint as the two of them walked. Izumi. Mina suddenly whined as she leaned even more of her body against Izumi's arm. We should totally have a girls' day. A girls' day — yeah. We should all get together, and go to the spa or a hot spring. Just us girls. I've been thinking about it since we had that movie night. I mean, it sounds fun. Izumi muttered. Right. Plus without the boys there we wouldn't have to worry about Mineta trying to spy on us. God, wouldn't that be a relief? Izumi sighed internally. With her door locked all the time she usually didn't have to worry about Mineta sniffing around too much, but that still hasn't stopped him from making a few passing comments here and there. None too bad. Thankfully. I already talked about it with the other girls and we thought that this Saturday would be great. Saturday. Mina. I'm going to be with my mom. Well, I figured since you already got permission to leave campus on that day, that we could all just pick you up from your mother's. We wouldn't be gone long, just a few hours, who knows, maybe you could even bring your mother along. I don't know, Mina. Well, it's just something to think about. We've all been so stressed that we figured a nice break was in order. I'll think about it, but I can't make any promises. Izumi and Mina both just made it to class and hurried to their seats before Mr. Aizawa came back. Still, they both got yelled at by Ida for being late for being early. Soon, the class resumed where it had left off before lunch started. Once Aizawa gave them the assignment for the day, he curled up into his sleeping bag and told them not to disturb him for the remainder of the class. For Izumi, she practically threw herself into classwork. It was the perfect way to distract her for a short period of time, at least. If she wasn't trying to work out, she was doing her schoolwork. It was almost scary how much she was getting done at night when she couldn't sleep. Today, however, a purple grape-headed gremlin decided to make a move while she was writing notes, and not in a good way. She didn't even know how close he was to her until it was too late. Mineta had leaned in from his chair and whispered into her ear. He was so close that she could feel his breath on the outer shell of her ear. Crush my face with your thighs. He whispered in a voice that made her skin absolutely crawl. Then he did the unforgivable, his stubby fingers found her BR strap that was hidden under her shirt and he snapped her BR strap. A noise that she couldn't describe left her mouth. It had to be something between a yelp and a scream, and before she knew it she shot up from her seat while backhanding Mineta so hard that it knocked him out of his seat and to the ground. There was a sickening crack that could be heard. Izumi didn't know if it was the sound of the slap, or Mineta's nose as she had struck it directly. Mineta made a sound like he was being gagged as he stuttered and clutched at his face. Izumi. Ida was the first to gasp out in shock. He chopped his arm at her, but he looked very serious and a little concerned. Yo, you absolute cretin. Izumi was shocked by her own voice and indignation. Mineta clutched his nose. I did not give you permission to touch me. Izumi seethed as she grabbed onto her shoulders in both disgust and anger. Mineta. Ida made a chopping motion in the air with his arm. Did you touch Izumi? I was just messing around. Mineta mumbled to her. It's not my fault she's sensitive. Izumi saw that she had given him a nosebleed and a small part of her felt bad, but a bigger part of her demanded he be hit again. That's not messing around. That's harassment. Ochiko was the one to yell in anger. And frankly, I'm glad she hit you. You deserved it. Idiot. You're lucky she didn't hit you with her quirk. Though, I would have paid money to see you go through the wall, heh. Bakugo laughed at the very real thought of Mineta flying through a wall. Kirishima chuckled as well and the two of them shared a very manly fist bump. Mineta, your comments are one thing, but if I hear or see you put your hands on anyone else again I won't hesitate to freeze them off. Todoroki kept his voice level, but his words were laced with venom. Mineta, always the person to have the last word, wasn't backing down. It was a compliment. It was not. Izumi snarled out. Don't touch me again. She wanted the situation to defuse and was willing to let it go. But he just couldn't listen. Mineta grabbed her wrist to stop her from sitting. Izumi's body reacted before her mind did. She didn't know how it happened. It was all a blur, but she heard Mineta's high-pitched scream first and foremost. She was on top of Mineta's back. She had his arm in her hands, his wrist bent downward. She kept him still with her knee planted firmly on the center of his back. I said don't touch me. You need to learn to respect boundaries. Her voice shook as she yelled. Her heart pounded in her chest and her hands shook while also feeling numb. Enough. Aizawa's scarf was suddenly wrapped around her body and she was yanked off of Mineta. Izumi didn't fight it, but she did fear it. This fear made her heart beat even faster, if it were even possible. Her mind reeled and her whole body shook from head to toe. Izumi felt cold, but it wasn't from fear. Turns out Todoroki was ready to fulfill the threat he made moments ago and got ready to ice Mineta at the same time Izumi had pinned him to the ground, but Aizawa had stepped in just at the right moment stopping both students from harming Mineta. Mr. Aizawa, while I don't agree with how Izumi handled it, I want to say that she did ask Mineta to stop touching her and Ida spoke quickly and with purpose, but Aizawa cut him off. I was listening in. I heard the whole thing. Aizawa's scarf went slack. Though, that didn't ease Izumi's trembling. Then it fully clicked what she had done. I'm sorry. She felt tears collect in her eyes. Mineta had scared her. Mineta. I'm so sorry, I acted before I thought the F. No, you shouldn't be apologizing for SHT. Mineta deserved it fully. Bakugo, surprisingly, came to Izumi's aid. We all saw and heard it. Mineta, go to recovery girl for that broken nose. We'll discuss punishment after class. Midoriya Aizawa turned his head to face her and Midoriya just wanted to shrink away at that moment. She shakily wiped her eyes and Aizawa sighed out again. Go outside, calm down, come back, and after class we'll discuss punishment. Sir. Momo abruptly stood from her spot. If I may, Izumi shouldn't be punished. Mineta not only made her uncomfortable, but he touched her despite being asked not to. I second that. Ochiko stood. Third. Jiraiya huffed as she also stood to her feet. No. Izumi found her voice. It was shaky, but it was there and clear. She felt her stomach drop for a second before she quickly composed herself. I appreciate it. But, you guys. I never should have hit him or pinned him down. I will accept whatever punishment Mr. Aizawa chooses to give to me. Izumi bowed to Aizawa and then promptly turned, leaving the classroom. She kept her upper lip stiff as she walked away from the classroom. Her head was held high as she walked quietly to the nearest bathroom. She felt the dam start to crack, it was only seconds away from breaking, but she held herself together until she found the nearest storage closet. She slipped inside, and shut the door. Izumi's breath hitched first and she just couldn't stop herself from sobbing out. She had to put both of her hands over her mouth so no one could hear. I didn't mean to, oh God. He startled me, I can't breathe. Her heart rate was rapid, her breathing became erratic to the point that all she could hear was her own breathing in her ears. Tears poured out of her eyes as she sobbed into her hands. She had no clue how long she stayed in that closet bawling her eyes out. It took some time for Izumi to eventually calm down to the point that she didn't feel like she was suffocating. Her shoulders heaved up and down almost violently, she gulped down air like a fish needing water, but after some time, she finally started to calm down. The first thing she noticed after her panic attack was that the skin around both of her eyes felt raw, they probably were. Her eyes itched as well, and she had snot dripping down her face. Clean yourself up, look presentable, was the first thought in her mind. She felt like a robot. It was weird having so much emotion to having no emotions in a matter of seconds. Izumi almost felt numb. Izumi found a clean-looking rag and quietly wiped the snot off of her face, and then blew her nose for good measure. She threw the rag in, what she hoped to be, a hamper for mop heads and rags. She then pulled her hair up. Her hair wasn't Momo long, but it was long enough to put into a small ponytail. She always kept a hair tie on her person in case it got too hot. Once her hair was up, she used the mop sink to wet her hands. From there she quickly splashed some water on her face and vigorously rubbed at her eyes. Ignoring the dull pain coming from the skin around her eyes, she continued to rub until she was sure her eyes weren't so red. I'm okay, I am fine, Izumi told herself as she forced her back to straighten up. I'm fine. Everything is going to be okay. I will take the punishment with pride. I will also apologize to Mineta when all is said and done. She let out a slow breath between her lips. It's going to be okay. Turns out she was crying longer than she anticipated. As soon as she stepped into the hallway, the bell to be dismissed rang. Whoops. Kids clamored into the hallway. Midoriya hugged the wall as she shamefully walked back towards the class with her head down. It's going to be okay, she reminded herself. Emotion started to flood back into her body, guilt took place in her heart. Izumi made it to the classroom and quietly she opened the door. No other students remained, everyone had gone back to the dorms for the day. Aizawa stood there wiping down the whiteboard. Izumi didn't say a word, she just walked in and stood behind him, her eyes to the floor. If I remember correctly, my instructions were for you to return to class. Aizawa broke the silence as he put the eraser down. I'm sorry, sir. My composure was less than ideal. It wasn't a lie. Aizawa finally turned his heel to face her. You struck another student, Izumi, I hope you understand that. Yes, sir. Izumi bowed down so low that she touched her head to her knees. I apologize. And I'll apologize to Mineta, I'll even write a letter of apology to him if you dash. Aizawa tapped her head, making her look up at him. Your punishment would be more severe if you had used your quirk. Understand this, Mineta will not get away with what he did. That being said, you still attacked your fellow student and that can't go unpunished. House arrest. Please. I'll take it. It was a horrible thought for her to have, but secretly she wanted it. It'd be a valid excuse not to see Fujiwara again. When you return from your mother's on Sunday, you're to clean the girls' washroom, clean the kitchen from top to bottom, and collect all the trash from everyone in the dorms. Understood. Izumi tried to not let her disappointment show. She bowed again. Yes, sir. Stand up. I'm not done. Izumi straightened her back up. She swallowed a lump down. I'm a hero, an underground hero, but a hero nonetheless. After a while of working, I've come to notice certain things about people. More so after I've become a teacher. Aizawa sighed and Izumi wondered where he was going with this. Well, Aizawa was never one to keep people in suspense. Izumi, I'll say this. I cannot force you to tell me what's wrong, but know this. I know something is either bothering you or something happened. If you ever need help, my phone is on and you know where to find me. You're dismissed. Thank you, Mr. Aizawa. As Izumi left the classroom, Mineta was walking in. She noticed he, indeed, had a nose splint and she felt bad for hitting him so hard. He couldn't even look at her as he ducked his head down and looked away from her. Before scurrying into the classroom, Izumi expected to get scared stares, or icy glares, from her classmates when she entered the dorms. She did not expect Ochiko and the other girls to be there waiting for her to thank her. I hope you put that little creep in his place, Ochiko said with a grin. You did what I couldn't, hopefully now he'll think twice about his comments. Momo sighed. The noise his nose made when you struck it was sick, but awesome. Jairu chuckled. Midoriya, what punishment did Mr. Aizawa give you? Rib bit. Sue inquired. I have to clean the washrooms and kitchen when I come back from my mother's on Sunday, and collect the trash. Boo. Hagakure huffed and Izumi was like, 50% sure that Hagakure was giving a thumbs down. Mineta more than deserved it. Regardless. Izumi jumped when a wild Ida appeared from behind. Ida suddenly chopped Izumi up top of the head with one of his hands. He didn't hit hard and he only lightly chopped once before putting his hand to his side. Whether or not Mineta deserved it, you should not have hit him as hard as you did. Izumi, you broke his nose. That's just not like you. Izumi looked over at the girls. Can we have a moment, please? She politely asked her classmates. They left the two alone. Ochiko did stay behind a little longer than the others, but ultimately left in the end. Once alone with Ida, Izumi spoke. He snapped my BR strap, Ida. He knew where my BR strap was under my clothes and snapped it. Can you blame me for being startled? Ida thought about it. I guess I can't, not fully no. However, you still pinned him to the ground. Midoriya, I know you couldn't see it, but your face at that moment, you looked almost like a scared and cornered animal in a way. Scared that he was going to attack you, so you attacked before he could. I won't lie. Midoriya, I'm concerned about you. Your eating habits became sparse and now this. Izumi hunched in on herself a little. Ida. I understand your concern, but I'm fine. It was second nature for her to say that little lie. I'm eating. She tried to say with a smile. Ida didn't smile. Now. You're eating now. Not even now. I'm just worried about you, Midoriya. She tucked some hair behind her ear. I'm sorry for making you worry, but I promise, everything is fine. The both of them finished at the same time. Izumi snapped her mouth shut at that moment. Ida sighed, Midoriya, you're one of my best friends, just know if you need to talk I'm always here for you. Okay. Ida gave her a ghost of a smile before leaving her alone. Izumi was exhausted and really wanted nothing more than to nap, but alas, she couldn't. She had to pack for the weekend. She trudged the whole way to her bedroom. The very moment she opened her door she knew something was wrong. For a moment she felt on edge. But that was only for a second before she saw the clear lump under her covers. The lump in the shape of a little girl trying to be sneaky. Oh man, what a day. Izumi shut her door as she melodramatically spoke. Sure enough the lump under her covers giggled a little. Izumi started walking towards her bed, making a show of tossing her backpack to the side. I could just lay down and sleep. I sure hope nothing is in my bed. Izumi felt her lips turn into a smile as she crept up to the bed. There was another giggle and the lump even moved a bit. Like you. Izumi jumped and Eri shrieked with laughter. The two of them had a small wrestling match. Eri continued to shriek and laugh, the laughter only intensified when Izumi caught her foot. Gotcha. Izumi was merciless as she tickled the bottom of Eri's foot. This caused Eri to violently toss the covers off of her body in a mad attempt to get away. Eri started to thrash and kick, all while laughing. Estapaha. Wani-san. Eri wailed with laughter as she tried desperately to get out of Izumi's grip. Of course, Izumi wasn't a monster, and she let go of Eri's foot after a second or two. Eri, what are you, Payback as Eri snatched up one of Izumi's All Might plushes and whacked her in the face with it. War. Eri let out a mad screech before making an attempt to tackle Izumi. Izumi hardly moved an inch as Eri tried her hardest to knock her over. The only thing Eri succeeded in doing was messing up Izumi's bed. This lasted for 4, maybe 5, seconds before Eri simply slumped down, her head resting against Izumi's cheek. I'll ask again. Izumi simply picked Eri up and allowed the girl to sit in her lap. What are you doing in here, sweetie? I was bored. Eri said it simply as she idly kicked her feet. Is that so? Izumi inquired as she started to braid Eri's long hair. Well, you could always clean something if you're so bored. An old line that her mother would use on her all the time. Sure enough, Eri's nose scrunched. Not that bored. Eri decided after a few minutes. Well then, do you want to help me pack for the weekend? Eri had a comical frown on her face at this. You're not staying. I was hoping we could do something this weekend. Eri's frown turned into a pout, she puffed her cheeks out and everything. Oh, I'm sorry, Eri, you know I visit my mother on the weekend. Eri's face suddenly lit up. Or maybe I can stay with you. Your mommy is really nice. No. Izumi didn't mean to yell at first, and she hoped she managed to save herself by correcting it. I'm sorry, at least not this weekend, sweetheart. Maybe another time. I will never allow you near that monster. Izumi promises herself. You can't come, Buet, how about you help me pick out some outfits for the weekend? Oh. That sounds fun. So, for the next 15 minutes, Izumi allowed Eri to go through her clothes and pick out what she liked best. Izumi lazily laid on the ground next to her backpack that was slowly being filled up with clothes. She only needed 2 outfits, but she didn't mind letting Eri do this. All she needed now was 1 shirt and another pair of pants. Because Izumi's shirts were on the second to the top shelf, Eri had to stand on the bottom drawer to snoop for the perfect shirt. Eri moved shirts aside for a few seconds before triumphantly holding up a bright pink shirt. This one. She chose the only 2 shirts that aren't All Might themed. Izumi couldn't help but sweat drop at this. The shirt Eri had chosen was simplistic at the finest. It was a bright pink t-shirt with a white and yellow daisy smack dabbed in the center of it. Her mom picked it out, even though Izumi wasn't a big fan of pink. It doesn't match her hair and makes her look awkward, she still happily accepted the gift. Maybe it'll make mom happy to see me wearing it. Izumi thought as she gently took the shirt and folded it up so it'll fit in her bag. Alright, I just need a pair of pants. Before she could finish, the top drawer opened up by a curious little 8-year-old. Oh no, that's what's this? Eri inquired as she pulled out a floral pattern BR, oh dear. Is it a hat? Eri Izumi couldn't stop it. Eri put the BR on her head. Izumi starts to laugh at the visual in front of her. No, it's not a hat. Izumi came over and retrieved her BR off of Eri's head. It's something you don't have to deal with until you're older. So, don't worry about it. Izumi thought about putting the BR back into the drawer, but then she just tossed it in her bag. Eventually she does show Eri where her pants were and they pick out a nice pair of blue jeans. Finally, after 30 or so minutes, she's packed and ready to go. Alright, I'll see you when I get back Sunday, okay? Izumi smiled as she walked Eri out of her dorm room. Eri frowned but nodded. Okay. Eri now looked crestfallen as she bowed her head. There you are. Mr. Aizawa suddenly spoke up from the elevator. I've been looking for you, Eri. What did I tell you about running off without telling me? I just wanted to hang out with Izumi. Eri held on to Izumi's hand. Still, you have to tell me these things. Mr. Aizawa sighed. Thank you for watching her. Izumi put on a smile. Anytime. Anyways, I should be going now. My mom is probably wondering what's taking me so long. I don't want to go. Do you need a ride? Mr. Aizawa offered. No, I need you to stop me from going, please. Nope. It's a quick walk. Aizawa scanned Izumi for a few moments. Well, stay on the main roads and sidewalks. Of course. Be safe. How can I when the monster lives with my mother? I'm always safe. Aizawa gave a dry chuckle at that. Whatever you say. See you Sunday. Izumi walked past Mr. Aizawa and Eri, clutching her bag close to her chest. It almost felt like the world was starting to close in around her. It'll be okay, I'll be okay. Chapter 4, Mama, I'm home. Izumi let out a slow sigh as she walked through the door of the apartment. Instantly, she was wrapped into her mother's warm arms. With her mom being a head shorter than she was, Izumi's nose brushed against her mom's soft hair and she could smell the green apple shampoo her mother always used. Izumi, I was starting to wonder what was keeping you. Inko pulled away after a moment or two. You're just in time to help me with dinner. Of course. What are we having? Curry. Sounds great, let me just put my stuff in my room. For just a second, just half a second, Izumi felt like everything was okay. She forgot about everything and everyone. It was just her and her mother, how it was and how it'll always be. And then Fujiwara walked into her line of sight and Izumi froze. Fujiwara was walking towards the living room and he stopped the moment the two of them made eye contact. He looked at her before he smiled and gave her a friendly wave. Hello, young Midoriya. He sounded so normal. Izumi's whole body tensed. Disgust and anger flared through her whole body, it scared her as she feared her quirk would pop off any second. She knew she was making a face at him, one of disgust no doubt, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Izumi felt her middle and ring finger curl on her right hand and she rested her thumb over those fingers. One blast, that's all it'll take. Her mind told her and all she had to do was just raise her arm and fire. But she couldn't do it. Izumi's lips turned tight before she turned away from Fujiwara. One day, he'll get what's coming to him. She felt the bitter thought invade her mind as she scowled. I just have to keep my guard up and never let it down around him. Keep my door locked tight. Okay, now, to go and help Mom with dinner. Dinner was silent. Nobody spoke and the air was so heavy one could cut it. If asked a question, Izumi would usually keep it to one-word answers, especially if Fujiwara asked the question. Really, she wasn't trying to be rude, she was mainly focusing on keeping her food down. Her stomach churned, but she forced herself to eat more than what she had been at school. Fujiwara sat next to her. He would look at her, smile, and try to make conversation. She hated him. He's the reason she couldn't sleep or eat. Her stomach took a nasty turn and her mouth started to fill with saliva. May I be excused? Izumi suddenly said out of the blue. You hardly ate. Inko's concern wasn't masked in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, I'll wrap it up and eat it later, okay? I'm just not hungry. She whispered as she reached into her pocket and held on to the All Might keychain. Her stomach continued to twist and turn violently. Inko frowned at this. Fujiwara just couldn't help himself. Now, Aizu, don't be rude. I don't remember asking you. Izumi spat out suddenly as she turned and faced Fujiwara. Her whole body bristled as the two of them just stared at each other. She saw it, the anger flared up in his eyes and face, but he said nothing. Maybe it's best if you go to your room, sweetheart. Inko quickly jumped in attempting to defuse the situation. She got from her seat and grabbed Izumi's bowl. Don't worry, I'll wrap this up. Thanks, Ma. I'm going to lay down for a while. Izumi scooted out of her seat. As she retreated towards the bathroom she heard Fujiwara talk. You spoil that girl too much, Inko. She's turning into a bit of a brat. Fuji, she goes through a lot. At that school of hers. Izumi didn't get to hear the rest of the conversation as she barely made it to the bathroom in time. Her stomach gave and all the contents of her dinner spilled into the toilet. Her whole chest heaved up and down heavily with the violent action. When the deed was done she sucked in deep breaths before spitting out the bitter stomach acid and flushing the toilet. Izumi rolled onto one of her thighs and wiped some sweat from her brow. Her head swam for a second before her thoughts collected fully and she slowly stood to her feet. Her knees wobbled as she did this. "I'm fine," she told herself. Quietly, and tiredly, she slipped out of the bathroom and back into her room without being noticed or questioned. Izumi locked the door behind her but wasn't satisfied with just the lock. She took her desk chair and propped it up against the door, before finally taking a pair of her jeans and tucking them between the crack under the door and the floor. Izumi refused to be unprepared. If he did try something, then at least now she had a fighting chance. "Maybe I can get Mom to see the monster he truly is," she thought angrily. When Izumi felt safe enough, she changed into her PJs. She knew she wasn't crazy. Her pants definitely hung off of her waist just a bit more than usual, but she opted to do what she does best in this situation. She's elected to ignore it for now. She was in the middle of changing into her sleeping shirt when her phone suddenly pinged. Once the shirt was on her body, Izumi grabbed her phone to see a new message from All Might. "Toshinori, are you okay?" Izumi tiredly rubbed her heavy eyes and reread the message again. It was an odd message for her to get out of the blue and she felt just confused by it. "Izumi, yeah, at my mom's. Made it safe." She almost added a line about how she was going to bed, but realized it was only 5 in the afternoon and Toshinori would absolutely question her. Izumi didn't have to wait long for Toshinori's response. "Toshinori, no. I mean, are you alright? Do you need help with anything?" Izumi, once again, rubbed her eyes and reread the message. Maybe it was because she was so exhausted and just worn out in general, but she just couldn't figure out where this was coming from. "Izumi, I'm fine, All Might. Don't worry about me and just enjoy your weekend and I'll possibly see you Sunday." Smiley face. She hoped this was enough to fool him. Izumi sat on the bed with a sigh and placed her phone on the nightstand. Running her fingers through her curly hair, she silently tried to think about how she was going to survive the weekend. "I know Fujiwara has a job. I don't know what he does, but I also know that he doesn't live here, he's often just visiting. Maybe he'll leave, but I doubt it'll be that simple. God, how I wish." Izumi laid down on her back and allowed the pillows to cradle her head. She had just meant to lay down and think about a possible solution, but she only succeeded in falling asleep with her phone still in her hands only seconds after laying down. Her last thought being, "I'm just going to shut my eyes." Zumi. Izumi awoke sometime later, clearly in the late evening as it looked like the sun was going down. Someone was knocking on her bedroom door and the doorknob rattled. She jumped and sat up abruptly, her phone falling out of her hand and onto the floor. Her heart pounded brutally, sweat started forming at the base of her neck, and her breathing became faster. As she sat there taking in all of her surroundings, she realized for the first time in a long while, Izumi felt afraid, alone, defenseless, and scared. "Izumi. Sweetheart." A breath of relief left Izumi's mouth once she realized it was just her mother on the other side of the door. "Yeah." Izumi called out and she slowly stood up from her bed. "Fujiwara and I are going to be watching a movie. Do you want to join us?" Her mother sounded so hopeful on the other side of the door and it made Izumi's heart ache at the idea of turning her mom down. They'd often sit together on Friday and watch a movie before bed. But the idea of being anywhere near Fujiwara made Izumi feel absolutely sick. Sorry Mom. I'm really not feeling too well, maybe tomorrow." "Okay, do you need any medication?" "No. I think I can sleep it off. Don't worry about me." Izumi practically whispered the last bit, but she knew her mother heard. "Alright, well, don't forget your dinner is in the fridge if you get hungry." With that her mother left her alone. Izumi sat back down on the edge of her bed. She then used her palms to push her hair back away from her face. With a slow and deep exhale out, Izumi curled with her head touching her knees. A part of her just wanted to scream. To scream until she was hoarse, but alas, if she started screaming that'd cause alarm from her mother. Izumi ran her fingers through her hair and felt an alarming amount of strands of hair leave with her fingers. She brought her hands out to look at them. Thick strands of curls had fallen off into her palms. I'm losing hair. Izumi's stomach suddenly went cold at the sight before her. Before she knew it, she vigorously shook her hands free of the strands that disappeared on the carpeted floor of her room. Nope. 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 She decided while she quickly and abruptly laid down. She knew she was just going to lay there for hours, but thankfully she had the ultimate weapon in her hands to turn her mind off for a good while. Her phone. Be it YouTube, Reddit, or TikTok. Izumi was prepared to just browse the web until she eventually fell asleep again. She grabbed her phone from the floor and turned it on. Izumi blinked when the first thing to greet her was a missed call from All Might. That was roughly an hour ago. Izumi gave her eyes a good rubbing before sitting up again. I better call him back. He's probably worried about me. She thought back to the school festival and how All Might had called her nearly 20 times while she was fighting with La Brava and Gentle Criminal. Play it cool. You didn't just pull out your hair and you haven't barricaded yourself in your bedroom. Izumi told herself before she pressed the dial button. All Might answered on the first ring. Hello, young Midoriya. Thankfully, All Might sounded cheerful and not upset. Hey, All Might. She moved away from her bed to sit at the farthest wall from the door. Is everything all right? Actually, I was just about to ask you the same thing. Izumi felt her shoulders deflate. All Might. I told you, I'm fine. There was a small silence on the other side of the line. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't buy it, my girl. All Might dash, young Midoriya, I mean this when I ask, are you in a dangerous situation? Do you need me to come and pick you up? Izumi's mind instantly short-circuited and all she could say was, what, in response to what Toshinori had said. How in the world dash? What in the world? How'd he know? Izumi thought she was being careful, but had she been so open after all? How much did All Might figure out? Do you need to be picked up? All Might asked again, his voice now serious, so serious that it sent shivers up her spine. Yes. And no. No. She spoke firmly, All Might, though I appreciate it, I'm at my mother's. You've met my mother. She's the farthest thing from a threat that you'd get, where is this coming from exactly? Call it a hunch. Izumi resisted the urge to snort into her phone. Now who's keeping secrets? She thought with a little bit of mirth. Again, I appreciate it and, if it's any consolation, I'd absolutely call you if I were in any danger. All Might hummed on the other side of the phone, clearly not entirely happy. Still, that didn't stop him from speaking again. Did you at least eat today, my girl? Izumi's chest swelled unexpectedly at the innocent question. Yeah. It wasn't a lie. She did eat, though she threw it all back up again. Yeah. I did. For some reason tears started to collect in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away. Thanks for asking. Anytime, my girl. She could feel Toshinori's grin on the other side of the phone. It's my job to make sure you're taking care of yourself, you know. Yes, as your successor. Yes, that is important, but not the main reason. Young Midoriya. You're more than just those to me. You're my friend and my student. I care an awful lot about you. The floodgates unleashed and before she knew it she was crying. Obviously, this didn't go unnoticed. Only, she wasn't sad. Izumi felt happy. Happier than she had been in, well, about a week. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. No. No. These are happy tears, All Might. She quickly responded back as she did her best. Thank you. I won't lie. I really needed to hear that. Nimbly she used her fingers to wipe the tears from her eyes. With a soft sniffle she quickly added, I mean it. Well. I'm glad. Just know I'm here if you ever need to talk. Okay. Of course. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. Counting the hour and a half she slept before being woken up by her mother. Izumi got a total of 3 hours sleep. Her night was roughly split between 20% tossing and turning and 80% watching social media while tossing and turning. Eventually she got up and got dressed in everyday clothes. It was 8 a.m. now and Izumi heard the sound of someone leaving the apartment. The problem was she had no clue if it was Fujiwara or her mother. The odds said it was Fujiwara as her mother often had weekends off from work, but did Izumi want to risk it and step out? Not only was Izumi starting to feel slightly caged but she also had to use the bathroom badly. Izumi resorted to pacing back and forth as she waited and listened for a sound. Any sound. If it's Fujiwara then what? Just stay here all day. I can't. I'm being stupid about this. Bringing her thumb up she started to chip away at the nail with her teeth. The last thing I want is to have a repeat of last time. I refuse to let it happen again. That quick of his is the real problem. One touch and I'm on the ground. Spitting out a piece of the nail on the carpet, Izumi went back to biting. Maybe if I use my quirk to rush to the bathroom and then rush back, it's not a bad option, but if mom's home, she'll wonder what I'm doing. There was a sudden pain that flared up on her thumb and Izumi looked down to see that she had chewed too low. The area was already starting to bleed. She brought her thumb to her mouth and secked the blood away out of reflex. I literally don't see any other option. So, she unlocked her door, removed her pants from the bottom of the door and put her chair to the side. Izumi opened the door just wide enough to peer though. The coast was clear. Izumi felt her quirk surge beneath her skin and with one violent movement she ran as fast as she could to the bathroom. There was a clatter, telling her that the wind from her quirk had knocked something down. Still, that didn't stop her from finally getting to use the bathroom. Once her business was done and she washed her hands, she got ready to run again. She opened the door, only to be met with her mother's confused face. Did you use your quirk? Inko inquired as she was holding a picture frame in her hands. So, that's what I knocked down. Izumi thought before focusing back on her mother. Izumi felt relief flood her body at the fact that it was Fujiwara that left earlier. Why yeah. Sorry, Mom. I really had to use the bathroom. I didn't know if I could make it. Izumi rubbed the back of her head. Inko nodded. Very well, just don't make that a habit. You nearly busted the frame. Her mother muttered the last part before putting the picture off to the side for the time being. Regardless of all that. How are you feeling, baby? Any better today? Can you stomach breakfast? Her mother then reached up and cupped both of her hands against the sides of Izumi's face. Her mother's hands were warm and made Izumi feel safe. A little bit, nothing too heavy. Maybe just some crackers. It wasn't a lie. Crackers. Dear, you're growing. You can't just eat crackers. I think that's all I can keep down, anything heavy and I might throw it back up. Inko frowned at this, but then nodded. Okay, some crackers now and then we'll see in a couple hours if you can eat something a little more nutritional. Izumi would be lying if she said she didn't feel like a little mouse as she nibbled on the corner of a saltine. While her mother made toast and jam for herself, Izumi could feel the looks her mom would give her every now and again. Do you at least want peanut butter? Inko just couldn't take it as she pulled out the jar of peanut butter. No. This is fine, thank you. Izumi could feel her mother's frown. Okay. And she put the peanut butter back. Eventually her mom made her own food and took a seat next to Izumi. So. What do you want to do today? Inko suddenly asked before biting into her toast. I don't know. Well. Fujiwara comes back from work around 3. We could go to the shopping center, have lunch. And then come back and all three of us have a nice dinner together. Izumi felt fear grip her heart like a vine refusing to let go. I don't know if I can pretend to eat that much, let alone be in public with him. Under the table she started clawing at her own leg. Izumi already made a scene with him at the table last night and the last thing she wanted was to be stuck in a social situation with Fujiwara. Sweetheart. I need to ask, did something happen between you and Fujiwara? Izumi froze. It's Inko sighed. I'm your mother. I've noticed that you seem a lot more tense around him and it's almost like when I bring him up, you get all quiet and you look afraid, dear. So, if something happened. Inko reached over and placed her hand on top of Izumi's. You can tell me. I won't be mad. Did you two get into an argument? Izumi quietly moved so the two of them were holding hands. There were voices swirling around Izumi's head now. Little voices. Tell her. She deserves to know. You don't have to be in pain anymore. But at the same time, there were other louder voices in her head. These voices were drowning the other voices out. She won't ever believe you. She'll think you're lying for attention. You'll make her sad. Izumi swallowed, her throat now suddenly dry. She felt at a loss for words, unsure of what to say exactly. Her mother sensed this hesitation and squeezed Izumi's hand just a little tighter. Izumi had no clue what exactly she was going to say, but she never even got to say it as there was a knock at the door causing both women to stop and look at each other in confusion. They both had the exact same look in their eye. Are you expecting someone? When it was clear that neither of them expected anyone, they both quickly stood to answer the door. Inko got to it first and opened it. Imagine Izumi's surprise when she saw that every girl, plus Aoyama, were standing there. Guys. All Izumi could do was squeak out in shock. Hello, Midoriya. Momo swiftly greeted her. Mon ami. Aoyama smiled but not before blowing a kiss in Izumi's direction. I told you this was the place. Achiko grinned. Man, and here I thought you were a floor up. Jairu hummed as she twisted one of her earphone jacks between her fingers. Wow. Izumi, you and your mom look so much alike. Hagakure excitedly exclaimed. She's adorable. Tsu cooed. What are you guys doing here? Izumi quickly asked as she stood next to her mom. Spa day. Mina exclaimed. Remember. Izumi found herself frowning. But Mina. I never said yes to the spa day. I told you I think a spa day would be perfect for you, Izumi. Her mother swiftly turned to face Izumi. But mom, I always spend Saturday exactly. You always spend your weekend with me. I appreciate it, truly. I do. But, I can see it. Sweetie, you're stressed and you need some time with your friends. It won't kill me if you want to spend a day at the spa. Wait here, I'll get you some money mom Izumi quickly followed her mom to the dining table where her purse was. Still in view of the door. I don't want to leave you alone sweetheart. You're too kind. Really, you are. I'll be fine. I swear it, here. Before Izumi could stop it. Some money was shoved into her hand. Go. Have fun. We'll do something when you get back. I promise. You deserve a break too, you know. Inko then reached up and placed both of her hands on the sides of Izumi's face once more. She then pulled Izumi down so she could kiss the tip of Izumi's nose. Mama. Izumi felt herself tear up a little at the simple gesture of love. It's appealing, Aoyama ruined the moment. Nothing like a mother's love Aoyama. Tsu and Achiko swiftly nudged the Frenchman, but it was too late and the moment was ruined. Thank you. Izumi mouthed to her mother before quietly putting the money away into her pocket. Izumi rushed to her room and grabbed her cell phone before rushing out with her classmates. Instantly there were cheers of happiness from the others when Izumi joined them. Inko watched her daughter swiftly leave with her friends. Inko sat at the kitchen table and waited for the door to click shut. Once it did, she let out a slow sigh and picked up her cell phone from the table and dialed. She didn't have to wait long for an answer. Hello. Fujiwara. No, I won't take up much of your time. I just have a question, what happened between you and Izumi? Chapter 5. Izumi's biggest mistake of that day was thinking that everything would go back to normal. After a much-needed spa trip with Aoyama and the rest of the girls, she felt happy and she wasn't as stressed. She had laughed genuinely with her friends in the hot springs and felt that she was making at least a little progress, when Aoyama had touched her hair and she hadn't attacked him out of reflex or fear. She even managed to eat and keep down a little bit of food that wasn't crackers. Unfortunately, Izumi was going to realize that normality wasn't coming back. Not for a while. After saying goodbye to her friends, she raced up to the apartment. By this point it was already mid-afternoon and nearly time to help her mother with dinner. She stepped inside the apartment. Instantly she knew something was off. Izumi didn't have to look around for too long as she saw Fujiwara and her mother sitting at the dining table. Instantly, Izumi felt on edge as she just stood there. What's up? Was all she could ask after it clicked that her mother and Fujiwara were waiting for her. Sweetheart, have a seat. We need to have a talk. Inko spoke firmly as she pointed to the nearest seat. Izumi slipped out of her shoes, left them at the door, and put some slippers on. Izumi gulped, shut the front door, and slowly walked over to the seat in question. She looked at her mother and her mother only. What did he say? Her mind raced as she slowly sat down in the chair. Now. I'm aware of what happened between you and Fujiwara. Izumi's eyes shot away from her mother and to Fujiwara. Fujiwara showed no emotion as he just stared at her. When they locked eyes, he smiled a little and Izumi felt sick. She didn't get a chance to speak up when her mother spoke again, tearing her eyes away from Fujiwara. I've already told Fujiwara off for arguing with you and for making an attempt to punish you without my knowing. That being said, you shouldn't have yelled at him the way you did, dear. What? Izumi didn't know what she was expecting, but she surely wasn't expecting that. I know it's hard. For you. Inko clasped her hand over Izumi's own. I know you aren't used to another man in the house. It's always just been the two of us since you were a toddler, but please, Izumi, understand that Fujiwara is trying his best for the both of us. Try and be a bit more understanding. Please. Izumi looked at Fujiwara out of the corner of her eye. He was still smiling, staring at her, daring her to make the next move. Izumi nearly jumped out of her skin when she felt a foot slowly snake its way up her calf. Izumi's heart leapt into her throat once she realized what Fujiwara was doing. Swallowing down the lump that formed in her windpipe, Izumi fought the urge to kick Fujiwara's foot away from her, all while her mother waited for a response. Of course, Mama. I'm sorry. It's not me you need to apologize to. Inko softly told Izumi as she looked towards Fujiwara. Izumi felt bile threaten to rise into her throat. Still, she turned and looked at Fujiwara. He still had that stupid smile on his face. It took all Izumi had not to reach across the table and just punch him square in the face with her quirk. I'm sorry, I'll try to be a little more considerate in the future. Izumi looked away from the both of them now and tried her hardest not to make face. She felt both angry and disgusted. I can't blame Mom for this. This is Fujiwara's doing. One day I'll be able to smash that stupid look off his face. One day. She promised herself. Great. Inko clapped her hands happily as she tried to lighten the mood a bit. The moment she did, Fujiwara lowered his foot from Izumi's leg. Izumi's skin crawled and she regretted wearing shorts. Now that the air has been cleared, how about we order takeout tonight? Sit in and watch a movie all of us together. Izumi couldn't say no. Literally, she couldn't come up with a good enough excuse on the fly. So, that's how she got wrapped into sitting between her mother and Fujiwara on the couch while they watched some action movie. With takeout in front of them. Izumi didn't eat. She couldn't. Izumi was only half watching the movie as more often than not she'd stop everything to look at Fujiwara out of the corner of her eye. Freezing at his every little movement as this man constantly shifted. Another power play. Izumi could only wonder. Inko leaned down to grab a container of food. Izumi watched her mother do this before she tried to focus back on the movie. Like she was a stubborn toddler, her mother suddenly brought food to Izumi's mouth. Clearly, her mother had noticed that Izumi had yet to eat anything. Izumi made a mistake, she opened her mouth. Food was shoved in with no regard. It was just a bit of plain rice. Something Izumi was sure she could keep down, though her stomach still turned regardless. Thanks, she chewed and swallowed. No, please. Izumi tried to deny another bite, but her mother wasn't having any of it, and before Izumi knew it more rice was shoved down her throat. Izumi felt sick. Inko, stop babying her. Izumi could tell that Fujiwara was growing irritated by her mother's behavior. Izumi felt angry for her mother at that moment. Who was this but to tell her mother what to do? It was absolutely spite that made Izumi willingly open her mouth for more rice. Izumi said this time around. Inko happily gave Izumi the rice. I can't help it. She'll always be my little baby to me. You're growing up so fast. Inko happily patted Izumi's head. It looked like Inko was going to give her more food, and Izumi's stomach gave an unpleasant churn, so, in an attempt to stop her mother from trying to give her more food, Izumi instead chose to snuggle up next to her mother. She rested her head against Inko's shoulder, and out of reflex Inko wrapped her arm around Izumi. Even though Fujiwara was right next to her, Izumi felt at peace and a little more relaxed. Izumi felt herself start to nod off before too long. Shutting my eyes won't hurt. I'm with Mom, she'll wake me. Was the last coherent thought Izumi had before she finally drifted off. Oh, how wrong she was. She awoke to a hand slapping over her mouth. Out of reflex, Izumi started to struggle and tried to scream. It had only lasted maybe a second or two before her limbs went limp and she found herself frozen. Shoot, Fujiwara whispered. You'll wake your mom. It seemed Inko allowed Izumi to sleep on the couch rather than wake her up. All the lights were out, save for one. The TV. It was still casting an ever-flickering light, but it was on mute. Mom. I hadn't slept with the TV on for years. Was the only thing that went through Izumi's head in that 1 second as she watched an infomercial pass by. Look at me. A sharp slap to the face caused Izumi to focus her attention back on the man that was above her, his hand still clamped firmly over her mouth. Fujiwara gave a sick little smile as he shifted, so he was now sitting on the edge of the couch. I let my guard down. How could I be so stupid? Izumi wanted to scream, to cry and wail, but she couldn't. Not with Fujiwara's stupid quirk keeping her still. Izumi hated to say it, she wished he had Stain's quirk. At least with Stain, Izumi was able to free herself after a set amount of time. Not again. Not again. Calm down. That lucid part of her brain suddenly took over with a stern order. There's a difference this time, he's not undressing me right away, so, calm down, and do what you do best. Analyze his quirk. Figure out what he can and can't do and find the weak point. Every quirk has one, and this is no different. He may have gotten the jump on me last time, but this time I'm ready. Now that I graciously got your attention. Let's have a little talk, my dear. Fujiwara's voice changed again. It wasn't the same voice that just spoke to her hours ago. It was dark, sinister, a voice that only meant danger. Fujiwara suddenly brought his free hand up and suddenly grabbed at one of her melons. Izumi wanted to whimper, no, she wanted to punch him. Hard. She wanted to hit him at 100% of her power and send him flying out of the apartment window. Now, I took the blame this time around. He hummed softly as he pawed at her. She felt sick, and Izumi felt bile rise in her throat at this sickening action against her. There was a fear instilled in her, a fear that told her if she attempted to vomit, she'd probably choke. So, she did her best to swallow the bile down for the time being. Focus elsewhere, he's only using his left hand despite the fact he's right-handed. Meaning his quirk probably only comes from his right hand. Still, I shouldn't take any blame. After all, you've been coming on to me, haven't you? He crooned lowly. Izumi's skin crawled. Her breathing started to hitch before picking up to panic levels. Aye. My breathing. That's not paralyzed. He can't stop my breathing. Then again, neither did Stain. Izumi could only breathe through her nose as Fujiwara kept his hand clamped over her mouth so tightly that she could feel his nails start to dig into her face. Tears suddenly started to blur her vision, and she felt her breathing only increase drastically as her chest heaved up and down. I never came on to him. I took measures to avoid him. What is he talking about? Fujiwara continued to greedily paw at her chest as he hummed grossly under his breath. His eyes were filled with a disgusting look of lust. He liked at his bottom lip and moved his attention to her other breast. I mean, look at the clothes you wear. So tempting. You've also been playing hard to get, don't think I haven't noticed. Oh, and how bratty you've been acting. Yes, you've been tempting me these last couple of days, haven't you? He leaned down close and Izumi felt fear grip her like a white-hot iron. Don't do it. If you kiss me, I'll bite you. Anger overtook her fear in a matter of seconds as time seemed to tick down to a crawl. He didn't kiss her. No, he leaned away from her and scoffed, suddenly letting her go with both of his hands. All feeling rushed back to Izumi and she sucked in a deep breath through her mouth. When feeling returned to her limbs, the first thing she did was activate One for All. There was a crackle of lightning as it burst from under her skin. She sat up, placing her feet on the floor. Yubstrd ready to attack, to fight, she turned to Fujiwara ready to blast him into next week. But when one is face to face with a revolver. A small gasp left Izumi's mouth as her quirk died down on instinct. Fujiwara pressed the gun against her forehead. The cold metal told Izumi that this gun was very much real and not a prop. There's a good girl. Fujiwara sighed almost dreamily as he pressed the tip of the gun even harder against her skull. I wasn't lying when I said I'd kill your mom, you know. He dragged the gun down from her skull and started to caress her cheeks with the cold weapon. Izumi became painfully aware that her legs were shaking as her breathing stayed ragged and hitched. He then dragged the gun so it was under her chin and pressed the barrel against it. Izumi's breath hitched once more. Fujiwara pressed his body up against hers and pulled on the back of her hair, forcing her to look up at him. He pulled the trigger. Izumi let out a yelp before flinching. She expected a bullet. But it turns out it wasn't loaded. Fujiwara smiled. It was almost identical to the type of smile Aizawa would give the class when he was being deceitful, only more twisted and sick, a smile one would get from pleasure. I'm not wasting a bullet on you, yet. But just know. There is a bullet in this gun. He almost purred while he backed up and lowered the gun to his side. Anger washed away any emotion Izumi had at that moment. F you. She hissed between her clenched teeth. Instead of getting mad, Fujiwara instead kept that sick sadistic smile on his face. There's that brat that I find so enduring. He couldn't help but coo. He then reached up with his right hand and lightly caressed the right side of her face with one finger. I still have feelings in my limbs. So, he's like Ochiko or Shigaraki, he needs all 5 fingers to touch in order for his quirk to work. She noted in her mind. Keep playing your cards right and you just might get to, again. Her fist clenched. Every little strand and fiber of her being was screaming at her. What's stopping you from attack him here and now? What's going on? The main light suddenly turned on and Izumi flinched at the brightness. There her mother stood in the hallway, her finger on the light switch as she tightened a robe around her body. Inko had her hair down and it was down around her face. She looked exhausted from lack of sleep and annoyed that her sleep was interrupted. "What are you two doing?" Fujiwara's ability to hide that gun of his was impressive. He walked over to the couch and leaned against the back of it. The gun was still in one of his hands but hidden by the couch. Inko never saw it. "We were just having a small talk. Isn't that right?" He looked back at Izumi. "Enough of this. Tell her. The gun isn't loaded. The moment she sees the gun she'll see dash." Izumi grabbed onto her wrist and dug her fingernails into her skin. She gnawed at the bottom of her lip for just a second. Fujiwara sensed her hesitation and simply moved the gun. It was a small movement but enough of one for her to silently stop and think about her next line of action. "But it is loaded." Izumi had to remind herself before she made any rash choices. "There's at least one bullet in that gun. He told me. But, it could be a ploy for me to keep my mouth shut. I can't risk it. If he shoots her because I made a rash decision, I'll never forgive myself. We were talking about how we could improve our relationship." Izumi lied as she looked at her mother. "I was apologizing to him for acting like a brat. This." Inko sighed in irritation as she pinched the bridge of her nose. "Well. I'm glad. But next time save the heart-to-heart for the morning. All right?" She asked as she looked between Izumi and Fujiwara, her voice now heavy with sleepiness and irritation. "I'm going back to bed." Fujiwara smiled as Inko turned her back to him. He smiled at Izumi before putting the gun in the back of his pants. "Good night, young Midoriya," he finally said before walking away from her. Before he fully retreated to be with Inko he turned to look at Izumi and simply put his finger to his lips. "Hush." Izumi felt many things. She felt the pain in her bare feet as they were chafed, cut, and bleeding. Her body was cold and wet like she had just gotten out of a shower, but her clothes were also wet and damp, yet while her body was cold, her hands screamed in pain when she dipped them in a bucket of hot, bleached-laced, water along with a handheld scrub brush. The main thing Izumi felt, however, was guilt. "I'm sorry, Mama. Forgive me, I couldn't stay. I just couldn't." Tears poured out of her eyes as she yanked the handheld scrub brush out of the hot bleach water and she started to scrub the dorm shower floors. She's been scrubbing for a little under an hour now. Her knuckles were already bleeding and broken from the power she put behind her scrubbing. Her mother was fine, as far as Izumi knew, but Izumi just couldn't stay in that apartment. Izumi felt absolutely awful, but the thing was she didn't even remember leaving the apartment. She just blinked and she was back at the dorm, shaking, wet, and in pain from walking all the way to school barefoot. The only thing she brought was the clothes on her back and her phone. A sob escaped her mouth as she dunked the scrub brush back into the hot bleach water. The open sores on her knuckles didn't appreciate this. With her hands still in the bucket, Izumi pushed the bucket up a few inches and moved up at the same time. She then, once again, yanked the scrub brush out of the bucket, water sloshing around and splashing her shorts as she never changed into pajamas before she slept. It was fine. Her shorts were already stained orange from earlier at the start of her cleaning. Thunder rolled from outside as the rain sprinkled against the rooftop. Izumi sniffled while she shivered under her damp clothes. She started to scrub the tiled floor and she noticed that the water below started to turn pinkish in color. She just kept scrubbing until it vanished. I should be happy. Right. He didn't force me this time. He just touched me, yes. Izumi put that thought on pause while she used her shoulder to wipe her tear-filled eyes. Yes. So, theoretically. I shouldn't have left, but. Her body and mind said to run and Izumi had no control over it. When the spot was clean, Izumi dunked the scrub brush back into the water, much to the dismay of her knuckles. Fujiwara said I was coming on to him. Are my clothes that tight? Am I showing too much skin? Izumi looked down at the outfit she had chosen that day. It was the shirt that Eri had picked out. The pink one. It wasn't even one of the CRP tops she owned for exercising. It was just a normal shirt. Yet, it was a tad smaller than her other shirts, and if she were to lift her arms it'd rise above her navel by a hair. Her shorts were just shorts. She wasn't wearing her workout shorts or any of her skirts. Yeah, they stopped a little above her knee, but they weren't too tight or even too revealing, at least she didn't think so anyway. Had she been sending mixed signals with these types of clothes? Clothes that fit her just right or a little tight? Izumi shook her head. She didn't know. Eventually she decided to just stop thinking altogether and only focus on cleaning. Granted, she was still openly weeping over her cleaning, and she was shivering, but she wasn't thinking about any of it. She didn't want to think anymore. If she thought, all it did was bring back memories of what happened. So, she was going to clean. She was going to keep cleaning until the bathroom and kitchen sparkled. Maybe even past then. Go beyond, plus ultra, right? Aizawa stood outside of the shower door. He looked at his watch. 4:54 a.m. was what the watch showed him. When the robot informed him that a student had entered the dorms at 3 in the morning, he knew immediately it had to be Izumi, as she was the only one who left for the weekend. At first, he was going to question his problem child. The first question being, what the hell was she thinking returning to the dorms at 3 in the morning, and why did she think that was a good idea on her part? By the time he entered the dorms and tracked her down, he stopped. There was something unnerving about hearing the usual optimistic Izumi sobbing in the shower. It really didn't help once he realized she was cleaning the showers. His punishment for her, of course. Then came her famous muttering. Now, Aizawa wasn't dumb. Something happened. In fact, he was sure something happened a week prior when her mood took this downward spiral. This muttering of her, the bits he could catch, he was absolutely sure that something terrible happened to her at her mother's. That and the fact that this is twice now she felt the need to come back to the dorms early while at her mother's home. He heard the sound of sloshing water, a loud heart-wrenching sob, before the sound of vigorous scrubbing accompanied by weeping. Aizawa scowled at this. I'll call Toshinori first. I'll talk to her after she's calmed down.